I talked about how Chuck Todd is trying to deliberately misinform his viewers when it comes to Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill, but Chuck Todd, unsurprisingly, is not alone because the aggregate corporate media establishment, ever since he introduced this bill, has kind of dogpiled on Bernie Sanders to attack this bill in every which way and tear it apart from different angles. And in this segment, I kind of want to take a moment to go over some of these attacks because none of them are actually substantive. They are all superficial, arbitrary attacks on Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All bill. So, first of all, we have Steve Chapman of the Chicago Tribune, who referred to Bernie Sanders' bill as, quote, a delusional promise, saying his proposal really should be called Medicare for All and a pony. It's everything you could want and then some. Now, Chapman's main criticism is based on the fact that it goes further than the Canadian healthcare system by offering dental care. And since he thinks this will never get passed, well, it's setting the Democratic Party up for failure because there's no way to deliver here. Now, Jennifer Rubin of The Washington Post referred to Bernie Sanders as a snake oil salesman and literally compared him to Trump because Trump also promised to cover everybody, but then went back on that promise. And also, this journalist claims that Bernie Sanders shouldn't propose this now because the Democrats are currently fighting to protect the Affordable Care Act. But my response to that is, one, we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and two, by saying that Bernie Sanders is akin to Donald Trump because Trump didn't propose a bill, well, you aren't realizing that Bernie Sanders has just proven that he's not like Donald Trump by proposing this bill. So that argument, it's self-defeating. I mean, you acknowledge that he has put forward this bill. So to call him a snake oil salesman is just, it's idiotic to me. Now, we also have Jonathan Chait of New York Magazine who argues that Bernie's bill gets us 0% closer to single payer, claiming Sanders is not a details person, though. He prefers to act as though the important barrier is the abstract notion of government-run insurance, turning every question about specifics into a question about values. In other words, Bernie's bill is superficial and it doesn't provide us with the details to actually transition to a single-payer system from a logistical and pragmatic standpoint. And basically, the author here is arguing that it can't be done. It's weird, though, how other countries were able to find a way to get it done. And furthermore, when you state that Bernie's bill moves us 0% closer to single payer, that's just factually incorrect because we now have a bill and it has 16 co-sponsors. So we are very clearly moving closer towards single payer. And furthermore, it's not just the co-sponsors. I mean, there are organizations now fighting for it. There are grassroots activists pushing for it. We are literally primary and corporate Democrats who won't get on board with it. So every day we're moving closer to single payer, but in trying to promote this idea that we are 0% closer with this bill, you're trying to make us think that it's pie in the sky and it'll never get passed when we know that that's bullshit because, again, other countries have single payer. This isn't a new idea. Now, turning to Politico, they claim that Bernie's timing is off with his push for this bill because Republicans are still hell-bent on repealing the Affordable Care Act. In fact, this article literally even hints that Bernie Sanders' push for a single payer might have actually catalyzed the latest Republican effort to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. And these articles are just the tip of the iceberg because there were many more attacks against Bernie Sanders' bill. And that's just in print media. I mean, when you go to cable news, there were more attacks on Bernie Sanders. Again, I talked about Chuck Todd, but also the self-proclaimed progressive Joy Reid covered this on her show as well, of course. And she talked about it in the most disingenuous, albeit unsurprising way possible.
Benji Sarlin was tweeting about this really great Vox piece that Ezra Klein wrote, so going through the challenges in trying to do healthcare, including the big amount of taxes you'd have to raise, taking 250 million people off their healthcare and putting them on this program that the government runs and all of that, you know. And Benji Sarlin asked the question, are the Bernie-crats going to accuse any Democrat who doesn't sign on to that whole blue plate special? Are they going to accuse them of being establishment and walk away from them the way that a percentage of Sanders supporters walked away from Hillary Clinton? Is there a risk that in 2018 you have a faction of Democrats who are so purist that if you don't sign on to that Bernie bill, you're done. And they will literally threaten the re-election of Democrats and threaten Democrats' ability to take over a House of Congress.
Yes, there's no question that that's a risk. And the tone has to be set by Bernie himself. Now, I see that he has said that this is not going to be a litmus test for 2018, and it's good that he said it, but I think he needs to say it and say it and say it and say it. And it'll be more important in 2020 when the presidential candidates come up. But it's going to be very important in both elections. And look, I think on the one hand, it's great that Sanders did this. It opens up the field. It opens up space to talk about health care in a lot of different ways. And so, and they're playing offense and pleasing the base. On the other hand, what happens when the Congressional Budget Office scores this and the taxes are like
through the roof? It won't happen. Very quickly, Jonathan, very quickly.
Real fast. It's not enough for Senator Sanders to say this isn't a litmus test over and over again. He has to condemn the people who attack. And that's something he has shown no willingness to do.
Well, first of all, this is a litmus test. We've already said that. They must not watch the Humanist Report. And also, if by attack you mean we're going to continue to call out and expose the corruption of Democrats who are shills for the health insurance industry and primary them, if they're not going to get on board with this, then yeah, we're actually going to do that. In fact, we're already doing that. Because if you look at Ruben Kihuen in Nevada's 4th Congressional District and Denny Heck in Washington's 10th Congressional District, we are primarying them specifically because they are unwilling to co-sponsor H.R. 676. So they keep contemplating whether or not progressives might make this a litmus test and might challenge Democrats who aren't on board with this. But you don't have to question whether or not we're going to do that. We are going to do that. And if you don't like it, tough shit, because Medicare for all is something we will not stop pushing. So I hope that clears things up for you guys. But their comment about taxes is what really made me the most angry, because this is a Republican talking point. First of all, even if it is a sharp tax increase, well, that's still going to save us money if we don't have to pay our monthly health insurance premiums. I mean, I don't think they realize just how expensive health insurance is every single month and how many thousands of dollars Americans invest in healthcare every single year. That's still subpar. That doesn't cover everything we need it to cover. And then on top of our monthly insurance premiums, we've got the deductibles, we've got co-payments. I mean, they are so detached from the struggle of ordinary Americans. I don't even understand how they're that dense. I mean, it's obvious. Listen to what we're saying. We don't like the current model. It's not working. But I mean, look, these talking heads, they're put there, they're on that show to attack single payer and help to maintain the status quo. They're doing exactly what they were paid to do. But if they honestly think that progressives are going to be silent, well, we're not. And even if they really want Bernie Sanders to try to rein in his supporters, Bernie Sanders isn't going to save them. Bernie Sanders isn't going to save corporate Democrats from progressives who will be fighting for this. This is a litmus test, and if you don't get the fuck out of our way, get ready to be steamrolled by progressives, because we are not stopping, because we have more momentum for single payer than we've had in a lot of our lifetimes, especially for us millennials. And if you think we're going to be dumb enough to back down right now when public opinion is shifting, you're even dumber than I thought. You're more out of touch and idiotic than I thought.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.